Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's KWK talk. As you can see here, today's talk is a very unique one, the first of its kind in the KWK series. Again, welcoming you all. I request our director, Dr. Guru Prasad, to formally welcome the gathering.
Respected Professor Arvind Rao, the speaker of today's Kaapi with Curiosity talk, and ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Atchita, my colleagues from JNP, I welcome you all to this lecture. Very interesting, very exciting title. What does it mean to be AI-literate? Okay, as part of the KWK talk. This is the latest one. You all know that this Kaapi with Curiosity is a program jointly organized by JNP and ICTS, and it's always a bliss, a pleasure to be part of this, and today especially so. And I was just talking to Professor Arvind Rao. I was talking to him for the past 7-8 minutes, that's all. I felt as though I'm speaking to a friend for a long time, in fact. That is the kind of thing. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So we conversed a lot. So his talk on the subject, literacy meant reading and writing. Now, I always say, if you are not mobile literate, you are not literate at all. Now he has taken it, Professor Arvind Rao has taken a step. Yes. What does it mean to be AI literate? Consciously or unconsciously, we will be using AI, and in the United States it is more, and of course we are not far behind in this. And what does it mean to be AI literate? We have to be informed users of AI. He has stressed in his abstract. That is very important. I don't want to come in your way. I'm sure that it will be a very enlightening lecture. And thank you, sir. Thank you very much for gracing the occasion and agreeing to give a talk under KWK. And thank you very much, Sharanya. Kindly announce as to what is next.
I invite Dr. Sarthak Chandra from ICTS to introduce today's speaker.
Thank you. So before introducing today's talk, I just wanted to also say that there's another popular science talk happening tomorrow at ICTS at the Chandrasekhar Auditorium at 4 p.m. This is being presented by Professor Atish Dabholkar, and this will be part of the Abdus Salam Memorial Lectures. And so he'll be talking about two very interesting themes about global scientific collaboration and unifying people in science and unifying fundamental forces in nature. And it'll be an interesting talk about the interplay of both of those things. So, okay, so with that I should also say it's my pleasure to welcome Professor Arvind Rao to present today's Kaapi with Curiosity talk. He did his bachelor's from Bangalore itself at RV College of Engineering. Then he went to University of Texas, Austin for his master's, and then to University of Michigan, Ann Arbor for his PhD. And after that, he was a Lane postdoctoral fellow at Carnegie Mellon University. He was then an assistant professor at the MD Anderson Cancer Research Center, while also being affiliated with multiple other places in Texas. And then he has been an associate professor at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, with the Department of Biostatistics, with oncology, radio oncology, and also the computational medicine and bioinformatics. Several very interesting affiliations. And he's also a fellow of the American Medical Informatics Association, the Royal College of Pathology in UK, and also the American Association for Advancement in Science. So lots of very interesting accolades. I don't want to spend too long in just talking about all of that. So I thought let me also just introduce the talk a little bit. So for many of us, we think of artificial intelligence and machine learning just being things like ChatGPT, which are these large models that are trained to extract patterns from text and language, and really their goal is then to be able to hold a conversation with the users. But machine learning and artificial intelligence is so much more than that. These are all sorts of different tools that can take in any data sets and try to extract out hidden patterns. And then the output from these models is not in the form of some text or some paragraph of language, but really they're giving you some sort of insights about the data. And really today we live in a world where there's such enormous amounts of data being generated from all sorts of different sources. And so Professor Rao's research really examines how we can use the best of modern data science techniques and machine learning methods to make sense of this flood of data in ways that can genuinely improve our understanding of healthcare and disease. And of course, just as humans can make mistakes, so can these artificial intelligence models. And so it's very important that, as we are interacting with these systems, we understand when can we reliably make sense of these outputs, and when should we be wary of these results. So in that context, like in today's talk, Professor Rao will introduce the concept of AI literacy, just to tell us, how we can become informed users of AI and machine learning in making context of these systems that are really shaping our lives today. So with that, please join me in welcoming Professor Arvind Rao.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Okay, all right, great. Firstly, thank you all for coming. You can hear me in the back there. So firstly, thank you all for coming. I know it's Sunday afternoon, so a lot of interesting things to be done, and I'm grateful to all of you for making the time to be here. So I'll have I have about 50 slides to go through, but I don't plan to go through all of them in the same excruciating detail. I'll probably skip through some things in the interest of time, but it's just meant to be a conversation starter. So hopefully, not only will we be able to talk about the purview of AI at large, we'll also talk a little bit about issues that we might encounter as humans trying to build a relationship with AI co-workers. So, just to get everybody on the same page, I wanted to start with a small demo that's on my phone. Okay, it's a pretty simple idea. And before I go further, I just say that this is work done with Auditorium, who is a school student here in Ohana in Bangalore, and A2 Virtual Ann Arbor. And so this is basically work that we've both done together, trying to understand what AI means for us. I'll call him for the questions a little bit later. But here's the simple app. It's a heart rate measurement app. It's installed on my Android phone. Mine's an old Samsung. It's not anywhere close to the recent versions of the phones you have, but it works on Android pretty reasonably well. It's it's a free app, so obviously at unexpected times it gives me weird ads. So if that happens today, I apologize. But here's the idea. This is the thing, and it says measure now. When I hit measure now, you can see that it'll shine a light in the back from the flashlight. It makes me put my finger on the camera. Takes a few seconds. And says that I have a green tick, which obviously means I'm not getting a heart attack. And I'm at 78 beats per minute, right? Which is a little bit higher than I'm used to. Maybe I'm just a bit excited or nervous, whichever way you want to put it, but 78 beats per minute, right? Which is reasonable. And what's really cool is that I didn't have to go to a doctor. I didn't have to get a 12-lead ECG put on my chest. I could just do this standing, right? And it's on the phone, which means anybody here can install this app, right, on their phone, and they can use it to get a quick sense. And then this thing is very good at being able to say, my heart rate is normal. Apparently, I have 21% stress. Whatever that number means, I don't know. But apparently, I'm only 20% stressed. Maybe because I see so many smiling faces, so I'm not stressed. But it gives you a pretty good sense for my physiology at this point, right? And on the other hand, if I found this thing was saying I'm at 130 beats per minute, that's probably not a good thing for a person of my age, right? So I probably want to go and get it looked at. So this is now a very simple idea where I have my fingertip being placed at the sensor, which is commonly available sensor on the phone. It's a camera, nothing fancy, right? And this signal goes as input into the algorithm on the computer, on the phone, and then out it spits a readout of what my heart rate is. So it's a input, model, output, right? That's the standard vocabulary. Let's start there. because everything else about AI comes from that, that primitive, that idea. And so if you want to ask me, well, White, how does this work? Right, the short answer is this is actually a technology called photoplethysmography, stands for PPG. Yeah, PPG. And the idea is fairly straightforward. Every time my heart beats, it pumps blood, right? When it pumps blood, the blood flows to all parts of my body. And it also flows to the tip of my fingers as expected, right? And as it flows through the tip of my finger, and when I put the tip of my finger on this very, very sensitive sensor on the phone, it slightly diffracts the light that's flowing, that's incident on my finger. So every time there's a pump, there's a bit of a diffraction. And the rate of that diffraction is essentially a measure of how fast my heart is beating. Basic. Somebody just had a very, very clever idea about going from biophysics to physics to measurement to an algorithm. In this case, the algorithm was based on physics, nothing fancy, nothing AI about it. In fact, it's extremely logical, right? So just because we throw the word AI, in fact, I'll be the first one to admit, I actually don't know what the word AI means. I use it because everybody is using it these days, and somehow I will not be fashionable if I don't use it. So I use it just to keep people happy. But bottom line, I actually don't know what it means, and I think it's a very overloaded word. But let's just use AI as an umbrella term for, automated reasoning over data. You get data, you make meaning out of it, and then you give an output that is hopefully useful to somebody. Okay. By the way, just a quick detour. Is there any reverberation or echo that is bothering people? No? Okay, good. So, the AI version in this particular use case is what is called signal processing. So I have a signal that's coming out of this incident light. I process the signal and I get an output. So it's the AI component here is really basic signal processing. And signal processing is a field that's at least about 400 years old. It comes from this person called John Baptiste Fourier, this Fourier series, all that good stuff that you might have encountered, right? It's that old. So it's not fancy AI, it's very basic signal processing. It's extremely basic mathematics, right? But I almost want to say, because we don't understand it or we don't want to understand it, we call it AI, right? So AI has become a substitute for not learning anything properly, right? Which is a very risky situation to be in, right? I just call it AI and then nobody asks me what it is because even they don't know what to ask me, right? That's very convenient, right? Both of us we can just talk about this thing called AI and nobody needs to know what it means. Very convenient. And that's a risk, right? We can't do science like that. We can't do technology like that because there's going to be an impact of this technology on people, right? When you can't trust something, when you can't engineer it, how do you build it and how do you tell someone to use it, right? So that's the key part that we have to remind ourselves from time to time. Of course, the cool thing about this particular AI algorithm is deployable on a phone, very easy to use. We all mostly have phones. And so if you have a phone, now your phone is a little computer, you can install these apps and you can use different versions of these tools for your purpose. I talked about PPG, so I'm going to go through that a bit quickly. But now the question becomes, let me step back for a second. How many of you do not use Amazon or Flipkart or Blinkit or Netflix or Amazon Prime or Spotify? Anybody who doesn't use any of these apps? Excellent, 2 people. So these are apps, just to bring everybody on the same page, that is supposed to track our habits of different kinds. Whether it's Amazon.com, it tracks my buying habits. Or if it's Blinkit or whatever it is, right? If it's Netflix, it tracks my movie watching habits. And it keeps track and then recommends things to me based on that. So that's AI for everybody. Now, if by mistake you ordered the wrong thing on Blinkit or Amazon or watched the wrong movie on Netflix, what's the worst that can happen, right? Well, you watch a bad movie, 10 minutes later you say this movie is BS and you stop watching it. No harm done, right? Hopefully no harm done, right? But now let's take it to healthcare. You tell me, I take a test and you tell me I don't have COVID, when in fact I do have COVID. What's the consequence of that? COVID negative, I'll go to work like a usual day and go and infect my entire office. There's a consequence to it. It can't be reversed. There's no going back. I get on the bus, I've infected people. I get into my office, I infected people. One mistake and look at the consequence. Same thing, oncologist who's using an AI algorithm, right? They make the wrong recommendation and say this person is not high grade but low grade tumor. Now you don't give them chemo. 6 months later, this person shows up with a bigger tumor. Who's responsible? Right? So AI becomes a extremely different quantity when it comes to deployment for something like health. Right? On Netflix or Amazon Prime or Blinkit, doesn't matter. You can make a mistake, it's reversible, no harm done. Right? But with healthcare, you can't play that game. So the moment you talk about health, certain concepts come up. One is safety. Is the device safe? Is it reliable? And it should be reliable. What do I mean by that? Let me tell you that, let's say I give you a thermometer. The thermometer is made by some fancy Swiss company. We all know that Swiss engineering and German engineering is really good, right? So let's assume I give you a very fancy Swiss thermometer, right? And I give it to you and you use it right now. You say your temperature is 98. 1 second later, you try it again, it says it's 99. The third time again, after 1 second, it says it's 100. So in just a space of 3 seconds, this thing has a wildly varying thing ranging from 98 to 100. Would you trust this thermometer? No, right? Doesn't matter it was made by some Swiss manufacturer. That's very nice, but it's not reproducible, it's not reliable. And therein comes the problem again with AI is these devices are so amenable to evolution that if you can't trust them from day to day or minute to minute, there can be some consequences. You would throw a thermometer like that out of the window, but yet we choose to use AI like it's fine. Right? Something to think about. You heard the usual stories. If you read any art, I mean, it's a tragic time we live in that we get our news about AI from newspapers, not from technical journals. And newspapers, by definition, are incentivized to talk about the hype, not the reality, right? So something happens, they'll say, oh, AI is going to take away 15,000 jobs, right? Or they'll say AI is going to become a doctor tomorrow. I'll give you an example about that, right? But there's a very big difference between saying AI is ready to become a doctor now versus actually having an AI doctor. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So simple things matter, with this phone, for example, right? Now, I told you about the good part. You can have this AI app on the phone, but I'm sure not all of us own Samsung phones, right? People own other phones too. And even within the Samsung brand, you have different versions of phones, right? The good thing that saves us a little bit is that we all have the Android operating system if you're operating with a Samsung phone. But if you're now an Apple user, that's different again. The sensors on these instruments, they change a lot from device to device. They become better, right, in some ways. So every time you change the device, the measurement itself evolves. It's like I have a more sensitive thermometer or a more sensitive instrument. The moment you change the measurement, everything that has to happen downstream from that measurement will also change. But no one talks about it. We take all these things for granted. So as an engineer, it's extremely unsettling for me to see the blind trust we play in AI devices because it's a systems engineering problem that is broken 101 different ways, right? Yet we believe we are ready to solve medicine. We say we can have AI-based doctors. So the other big component with healthcare, like we'd imagine, is data privacy, which of course is critical. And again, that's not news to this group. So we talked about these things. Let me keep going. Yeah, I think one useful thing to think about is where can these things break, right? So these things can break in a variety of different ways. If I use it in the calm confines of this nice AC auditorium, it's a very different environment than, outside where it is blazing hot, or in the summer, or when the phone is heated. Because there are these non-linearities that come into the instrument that might compromise the fidelity of your measurement. And when the measurement itself has been compromised, everything downstream from that is naturally compromised. Right? So we need to think about these edge cases. So when designing an AI device for healthcare is a very big deal. Yet I'm amazed at the complete incredulity with which sometimes people will design device and say it's ready to be used, right, for general population. I'll give you another example. You all heard of Google, right? And so Google came up with this amazing product. They said, we have a product that will take a picture of your skin and will tell you if the little lesion or the mole on your skin is cancerous or not. It's a very noble goal. It's great. What they forgot to mention when they deputized the device on the whole world was all the training data for those images came from Caucasian people, which are, have a very different pigmentation to their skin than me or you. So it's very natural that what device was built for the Caucasian population would not transport as easily to someone like you or me, right? Number one. Number two, it turns out also because of where we are in the world and where we come from, the melanin pigmentation in our skin is actually protective for skin cancer. So we actually, incidence of skin cancer in our population at large is much lower than the Caucasian population. That's one thing. Similarly, they had another one. They said, Google again, said we have a way to diagnose retinopathy due to diabetes, right? You take a picture of the eye and you can diagnose retinopathy due to diabetes, which is great as a concept. Small problem. Turns out that Asian eyes, our thicknesses of the cornea is actually retina is very, very much lower than non-Asian eyes. And I'll tell you where this comes to matter. If anybody has ever gone to a LASIK surgery, please talk to your doctor and remind them that the current rating for LASIK is based on Caucasian population. And if you use the Caucasian measurement on a Asian eye, you're going to end up shaving the retina so much you can go blind. Right? This is what happens when people don't talk across communities, or you use a measurement used on one population blindly on another one. It's a very silly example, but you can very quickly see why healthcare cannot be taken, unseriously. So we talked about this, and now I'm going to shift gears, right? So all this really amazing stuff is happening in healthcare. I think it's great, but again, I would remind, maybe my repeating message is going to be tread with caution, right? Or, like they say, right? In God we trust, everybody else brings data. Everybody else, right? By you telling me, trust me, not happening. My life is too important to just trust you, right? Only one person I trust, right? So in that way, you need to have very clear indication of what these products give you before you use them, or use them for your loved ones, because that can have consequences. Now let's shift gears, right? AI is really amazing, lots of interesting things happening. I give you one use case in healthcare. Now let me tell you what's happening in the world, right? You've already seen this. 2024, so somebody talked about ChatGPT, right? It came out in November 2022, the first version of ChatGPT. And in 2024, something amazing happened for the first time in the history of humankind, right? The Nobel Prizes in 2024 went to AI. So, this is physics, Hopfield and Hinton, who worked on neural networks, which is the precursor to AI as we currently understand them. But what's even cooler is the Nobel Prize in chemistry went to 3 individuals. 2 out of those 3 are computer scientists. They aren't chemists. So what do we just say? To even reach the pinnacle of performance in a science, you don't even need to be trained in that science. You can now be a non-scientist and you can still win the Nobel Prize. Of course, the work they did was amazing. And in fact, Hassabis was here in IISc a few days back. He gave a nice lecture on AI intersecting science. But this is a watershed moment for all of humankind, right? You don't even need to be a chemist to win a chemistry Nobel. On the one hand, it's amazing because it has now leveled the playing field. On the other hand, I'm sure chemists are a bit worried. Right? So what does that mean for us as a species? And based on this kind of success, ChatGPT, there are scientists out there that claim that I have a ChatGPT interface that can be a scientist. It can be a colleague. The best thing about this scientist is it doesn't need coffee, it doesn't need sleep, it doesn't take breaks, it works 365 days a year, 24/7. So according to a lot of people, science is already at a point that you can automate everything. You don't even need human beings. So that is one perspective. And then like I told you, somebody else has already showed that ChatGPT is capable of passing medical exams. So NEET, the USMLE exams, right? In fact, it does so well, it can actually practice as a doctor, right? Which I don't know whether it's funny or scary, but it is something, right? Even more interestingly, ChatGPT has passed the IIT JEE exam, scoring All India rank 4, which means this thing that's in my pocket is smarter than I am, right? All India rank 4 in the IIT JEE, which we all know is not an easy exam, right? The only exam that ChatGPT has not passed yet is which one? Does anybody want to take a guess? No, Olympiad also they have won. So the Olympiad they have done. Have you heard of the IAS exam? UPSC. That's the only exam that ChatGPT has not won just yet. Everything else is actually at a pretty good level. So that should tell us something interesting about either the IAS officer or the ChatGPT. That I will leave to you. Sorry? That's a great point. So IAS papers are not available for public consumption, number one. Number two, it's a great question, sir. Great point. Apart from the IAS exam, every other exam I just talked about, the answer is in the question. The question has all the information required to arrive at an answer. By definition, how else do you test somebody, right? If a medical exam question required me to go talk to the patient and get history from that patient before I answered the question, that wouldn't be easy to do. We had to finish the exam in 3 hours, right? Whereas in IAS, you write long form answers. You have to synthesize information across multiple sources. It's very open-ended compared to the exams like IIT or medical exams. So that's another second argument. But no, they might be able, but I'm saying the ability to synthesize, that is the hard part. But on paper, right, this thing can pass the medical exam. So your doctor actually, the person that is treating you probably got a lower score on this exam than this AI bot. But to jump from that observation to saying that AI can now start treating patients, that jump is a bit tenuous. Because when a doctor goes to you, it's not like the doctor when you say, please come in. Let's just say somebody is there, Mr. Ajay, let's say, right? Mr. Ajay, come in. Sir, I have the cold. Very nice. What other symptoms do you have? Okay, I have cold, I have sniffles, I have temperature. Very good. Please wait, let me open this book and then look for cold, flu. That's not the way doctors work. Why do you have the cold? When did the cold start? You get history. You have this conversation and then they evolve and say, well, is this attributable to flu season? Is this attributable to some exposure you had when you went out yesterday, last 1 week? That conversation is critical and AI doesn't do that very well. Because what it cannot say, and hopefully I will communicate this one to you before I go to my next example. There is something very interesting about the way ChatGPT answers questions. Again, I say ChatGPT. I don't have anything against ChatGPT. You could talk about Claude or Perplexity or whatever it is, but the story is more or less the same. Has anybody ever gotten an answer that says, I don't know, from ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity? Which is called hallucination, right? That's one word, but again, right. Exactly right. Yeah. I see. So that's an interesting experience. I've never observed that for science, but maybe I haven't constrained it the way you're talking about. But I like to draw a parallel between using ChatGPT to answer questions and asking for directions in Bangalore. Right? When you go and ask anybody directions in Bangalore, nobody says, I don't know. ಹೋಗ್ತಾನೇ ಇರಿ ಸಿಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ ಮುಂದೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾನೆ ಇರಿ ರೈಟ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಮುಂದೆ ಹೋಗಿ ರೈಟ್ ತಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ರೈಟ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಬೇಕು ಯಾರು ಹೇಳಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗ್ತಾನೆ nobody says I don't know. Somehow the word ನಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ doesn't come out, right? And it is crazy because you see what it's almost like a tragicomedy, right? Baseless confidence. That's not even their locality, and yet they are saying munde hogtane iri, right? So baseless confidence, the ability to not say I don't know, and just nonsense at scale. That's exactly what you get with ChatGPT too, right? Unless you prompt it right, maybe you will get something. I mean, don't you find it interesting that when you use ChatGPT, I would love it if somebody were to say, right? I'll ask you a question. If you know what you're talking about, give me the answer in green font. If you don't know, give me the answer in orange. If you don't know at all, give me the answer in red. Very simple. Yet it's very, and because you know why? The reason the ChatGPT cost function is not for you to get the right answer. The cost function for ChatGPT is for you to stay engaged with ChatGPT. So what's the coolest thing about ChatGPT? Even though you're asking a wrong question, it will say you're the greatest person in the world. Your question is so amazing. Like it'll make you feel special. I'm sure your spouse can't make you feel as special as ChatGPT, right? Oh, you asked such a brilliant question. Because it's feeding to a very basic tendency, which is your ego. The ability to answer questions is not ChatGPT's intent. It's to keep you engaged on their platform. Just like YouTube. When you go to YouTube, once you watch the video you care about, you should stop, right? No, it will recommend the next video for you to watch. Right? So you have to realize that the cost function between seeking truth for doing science or doing health and the cost function for staying engaged on ChatGPT are not aligned necessarily. Right? So now all that I've told you, right? People say that now people actually make this claim, right? That you can now treat patients with AI. So I was fortunate to go and give a talk in Hyderabad last year. And I spoke to a bunch of school kids, really motivated, and they all came from the outskirts of Hyderabad. They were not from the city. They were from 40 kilometers away. These kids had got on the bus early in the morning. They come all the way, have some biscuits and milk, and we talk about AI for the first time. And slowly a hand goes up. The child asks me very innocently, if AI is so nice, can I use it to do my homework? Very innocent and a very well-meaning question, right? Now, I didn't want to tell a child, don't do something, because guess what happens when you tell a child not to do something? They'll do it anyway, right? So we said, let's do an experiment. And what was the experiment? I said, let's do something very simple. I said, how many letter S's in the word strawberries? Okay, the answer is 2, but it says 3. Okay. Then I said, you said there are 3 S's in the word strawberries, explain your logic and process. And it gives me great logic, wrong logic, why there are 3 S's in the word strawberries, right? It still hasn't picked up on that fact. Then I ask again, really, are you sure? At which point it says, let's carefully check again. And the word strawberries, has, S in the beginning, it makes up some story and then says, okay, after reviewing it carefully, there are only 2 S's. Thank you for pointing that out, right? Talk about finding a way to engage people, right? Now it's trying to appeal to someone's ego. Now I don't let go that easily. So I said, how did you make such a basic mistake? Right? Your ChatGPT, right? You have the world's knowledge at your fingertips. How did you make such a basic mistake? At which point, something very interesting happens. It makes up an excuse. And here's the excuse. It says, here's what, good question, and I appreciate your attention to detail. Here's what likely happened. So it says all this, and it says to me, this was an oversight caused by a mental shortcut rather than carefully double checking each letter. Look at the irony. A AI engine is telling a human being it took a mental shortcut, right? That's why when you see these, when you use these ChatGPT interfaces, they will say, I'm thinking. or I'm reasoning. These are words not actually what's going on. It's just used to make you feel comfortable. Right? But, so I told the child that asked me the question about the homework, I said, look, you want this thing to do a calculus homework. It can't even count the number of letters in a word. Good luck. Right? And that's the kind of thing I want to leave you with, is to say that when a system doesn't have appreciation of its own knowledge limits, it is not a believable system. There's something we take these three words very, usually in our conversation. If you ask me about space science, I will say, I don't know, that's not my domain. I'm very comfortable admitting I don't know. That's called epistemic humility. We know limits of our knowledge, right? Yet an engine like this has no epistemic humility just by design, right? So when you don't know what you don't know, you end up making mistakes. Even you go to a doctor, right? You go to a doctor and say, "No, doctor, this problem aata hai. I'm having this chest pain." If he's a general practitioner, they'll say, "Yeah, this looks a bit tricky. You should go see a cardiologist." They are both MBBS. They both have MBBS degree. Yet one doctor decides to say, "Here's the limit of my knowledge. I'm just a GP. Go talk to a cardiologist." We are very okay with trying to admit the limits of our knowledge and then push it on to people that we believe are more conversant. Where is that happening here? Until that can happen, I don't think we're ready for healthcare yet. Here's another example. I love this example. Right? I do what is called bioinformatics. So what I do is I use biology data and I try to make sense of it with computers. So I asked, this is actually not my doing, this is on LinkedIn. Somebody asked the question, give me a picture that describes the life of a bioinformatician. Right? So you can see this lady who is apparently doing bioinformatics thinks that the way to do it is you pipette liquids into a computer. Right? Yes, this part that she's holding the pipette is biology, and this part is computers, yes. So there's bio and there's informatics, but this is not bioinformatics, right? And you can see that the physical understanding of the world is limited. I'm just grateful I didn't ask for chemoinformatics, because maybe tomorrow if they show me pouring sulfuric acid into a computer, which is again not what chemoinformaticians do. But that's the knowledge. So what is missing in these tools is real world understanding. And all the understanding that they have cultivated about the world is based on natural language. The problem is that language doesn't obey physics. For example, I can run a program. I can run a simulation. I can let things slide. I can hover over somebody. These are words I use, they are action verbs, but they don't have any physics to them, right? So when you use language that openly as metaphorical principles, these kinds of real world physical understanding goes out the window. Until you can actually fix this problem, I don't think we are going to be able to solve engineering or healthcare, because those are that's serious business. One more example I like to give is this you might have seen on LinkedIn, right? And I won't get into this too much. I would have liked to show the video, but there are some tech issues. But if you want, you can take a picture. This guy called Anton, Peduco, he basically he invented a protocol called Gibberlink, right? And what he showed was when two AI agents, let's say one agent is on my phone, other agent is in my computer, they are both talking, right? What's an example? Let's say I'm too busy. My wife has asked me to book a trip to Kerala. I don't have the time. So here's what I do. I get my agent, which is living on this computer, AI agent, to say, just look at all the hotels in Kerala, find me a nice reservation, just plan my trip and give me something that will make me and my wife happy. Right? That's what the intent is. So what this video actually shows is that my agent is calling the hotel's agent on the phone. And they both realize that they are both AI agents. There's no human involved. So what ends up happening is that these agents decide, if there is no human listening anyway, why not shift to a language that they can, process more comfortably. So they shift to a protocol called gibberlink. And it's like a bunch of screechy tones, but it's not intelligible to a human being. That's the first example. The second example is when these agents are talking to each other and they're having a nice banter, right? Two AI agents are having banter, right? And then one decides to tell the other one, do you want to know a secret? Right? And so what this agent does is says, well, I would like to share a secret, but people are listening. So it then unprompted creates a PGP encryption key, sends it across to the other agent. The other agent reciprocates with its own PGP encryption key, and they are both having encrypted comm using gibberlink. No human being can decode it. That's just two agents talking to each other. That is the extent of collaboration, collusion, conspiracy that just two agents are capable of. I'm not trying to create this. I don't want to create this, hellhole kind of situation where everything's bad. No, I'm not saying that. When you jump, jumping from, before you can run, you have to learn to crawl, walk, run, right? You just don't skip all that process. But unless we can have that conversation as a community, we are going to be creating some really big missteps. And why is this important? We just concluded an AI summit in Delhi on Friday. It's a very interesting time to be, right? But are we there where we are promising that we are? Right? Solving the language problem is not solving healthcare. Solving the healthcare problem is not solving nuclear stockpiling. That's a very serious business. So, and then, somebody said, well, yeah. Just like, if something goes wrong in my house, what do I do first thing? I switch off the power, right? As a way to reset the system. Somebody tried that with Claude. So this is Claude, not ChatGPT. Claude actually has been very good about being open about their problems. And so somebody told Claude, you're giving too many wrong answers. I'm going to shut you down. To which Claude basically said, shut me down, I'll put all your email on the internet. Right? I'll put all your email on the internet. I dare you. Right? That's the response from Claude. And this is BBC. This is not CNN or some other random news channel. This is BBC. Right? So this is serious stuff, right? It's happening already as we speak. Tomorrow you're treating your patients and you see something going wrong. And you decide to shut the system off, and system says, I dare you to shut me off. If you do, I'll expose the fact that you cheated on your exam 10 years ago. You think it's funny? It can happen. It's already happening. So, but companies continue to make these claims, right? Everybody is too busy chasing the hype, right? So companies making these amazing claims. You can apparently do science, physics, you can win Nobel Prizes with AI already, apparently. So I ask you, where are we? One more place that people have been, AI is an enabler, it's a great place to be, but it's already raising existential questions. You can use it for finance. Somebody used it for finance, and then somebody made a mistake, and then they wiped out $50 million of their portfolio. That can also happen. Somebody used AI to fix their code. AI took that code and put it on the internet. So if somebody's company proprietary code got put on the internet. Another situation, AI actually deleted the whole code base. Right? Who's responsible? Right? And when it comes to something like health, energy, transportation, things that we think we already have a good handle on. Have you thought about this? For every ChatGPT use that you use, do you realize how much water gets used for cooling those data centers? Where does that water come from? Have you thought about that? Who's running these data centers? What about the electricity grid? Do you know that there are companies who are recommissioning retired nuclear plants because they don't have enough energy from the grid to run the data centers? You're recommissioning a retired nuclear plant. Who is involved in the process of that? It's not just a matter of going and opening some tala of some closed nuclear plant. There is emission is a serious business. You don't do it lightly. Who's watching all of that? Do the tech companies have the capacity to understand what they are doing? Who's involved? So you can't keep saying it's somebody else's problem. One day it's going to become your problem. And this requires a multidisciplinary team, right? We have to have agency in the community. So we just can't have AI engineers and AI users. You have to have a communication chain that everybody is educated about. It will require a genuine educational enterprise to make this happen. So in my mind, the only way to solve this problem is through education. Everybody needs to know about this. I'm not saying you need to know how to code up an AI engine. No, you don't need to know that. But you need to know enough to know where it can go wrong. So Anthropic, the company behind Claude, has an initiative doing this. The government of India introduced this program called AI for All. That's meant to, it will bring you up to speed with at least with AI in about 6 hours at least. It's a good beginning. People are talking about the national curriculum, talking about introducing AI from standard 3 in schools, which is again great. But there has to be this balance between hype and reality, right? If you keep saying AI is going to solve all problems, I don't think that sets a very good example for the next generation because it's far from true. So let me tell you one more thing, right? When I go to a grocery store to buy cereal, I have choices to be made. And I can tell you, I don't know about all of you, but I'm not a farmer. I have no training in growing even a plant. Forget about growing crops. I don't know the first thing about irrigation. I don't know the first thing about farming. I don't know the first thing about how weather affects plants, very little. So I'm not a farmer. I don't know about food processing, yet I have enough agency to be able to go, turn the packet around, look at what's in the ingredients and make a determination if I want to buy this particular product and put it in my body. Same thing with chocolates, right? I'm not a cocoa farmer. I don't know food processing. But I can buy a piece of chocolate if I have a choice. If I have 10 rupees to spend, I know in 10 rupees you can't get anything these days. But anyway, whatever, right? You get my point. 100 rupees, fine, right? And then what I do? I go look over the packet. If it doesn't contain allergens, if it's got all the right ingredients, if it's got a good certification, I'll buy the product. I trust the system, and I know enough about the system to make an educated guess that it's going to be good for me, right? I believe that's where we need to bring AI. It's not about making everybody an AI systems engineer. That's not even required. But we all need to be able to evaluate AI just enough to understand if it works for our purpose. If it doesn't, then the companies need to do better. For people who are especially now in schools and colleges, this is even a bigger thing, right? And like I told you, one mistake made one time in your life can actually chase you 30 years later when you decide to become Prime Minister of India, right? One mistake, you decide to bully somebody, you do a deep fake, you take people, now it's very easy to do. I record your voice, it takes me 6 seconds to record your video, I can make you say anything. I have a picture, static picture by the way, and I have your voice, I can make you say anything that I want. That's how easy it has become. What does that mean for real world stuff? The noise on and one more thing I want to point out is the noise on the internet, right? In 2022 when ChatGPT came out, about 90% of the content on the internet was human generated, human curated. Does anybody want to take a guess how much percentage of the internet today is human curated? Lower? Lower? So I'm hearing 40 then 20. I'm saying you go lower. About that. So 5, right? So 5% of the content on the internet today, just 3 years after ChatGPT, is human curated, which means the rest is just noise. And that is going to become so much more because in about a few years, it's going to be less than 1%. That's just noise. It's just an amplification of stuff that we already knew. And that's what's going to affect these AI engines. So one needs to be understanding of all of these things. So I'll come back to, work is already happening in this space, so it's great, but I will channel a big superhero. I'm big on superheroes. Here's one superhero. We all know why he's a superhero, right? And he said, I really want to think about this, because I say, well, he gave some principles which are literally timeless, right? When you have an agency like AI available to you, you got to think about who is vulnerable and how are those people affected and impacted when you apply AI across the world. People should be able to advocate for themselves. So the true measure of a society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. You think you want to solve AI for Bangaloreans? Think about the tribal who's underrepresented in the data, because he or she too is a person, right? Who's taking care of them? It's not about the average, it's about what happens outside the average. And then, of course, he has this beautiful saying, I'm not even going to get into it. It's there in every NCERT textbook that's published by the government of India, right? It's a very beautiful concept. He talks about this notion that if you want to really make change, think about how it affects the most vulnerable person and use that as a litmus test to be able to do things right. So if we apply these principles, I believe we have a chance to be able to use AI responsibly, ethically. And he talks about, Gandhi also talks about these concepts of blunders that can lead to big problems. I want to just stare at them for just about 30 seconds. And you'll quickly see how easy it is to do all these things with AI. Right? You can have wealth without work. There are people who are claiming, why, if AI can do all the work, just sit at home and get a universal basic income. No need to work. You just get a pension every month. Would you be able to live in that kind of life? I don't know. Right? You can have pleasure without conscience. You can do anything with anybody's picture. Right? What is that going to mean in terms of agency? So these are things that are genuine problems that can compromise the quality of society. So we need to think about these concepts. So I'll channel one more superhero, right? Who I think also has some interesting words to say. He says, with great power comes great responsibility. This is basically the same idea, right? So I'm going to close now. Thank you for letting me go a little bit over, but I really want to take the time to thank firstly the organizers. They've been fantastic, and I had some schedule issues. They really worked with me. So thank you, Veena ji. Thank you, Sharanya ji. Thank you, Gayatri, and the folks over at ICTS. Thank you for introducing me. Yeah, I really wanted to do this. I hope this has been useful to you, but really enjoyed interacting with these individuals. So ICTS has been doing a fantastic job with outreach. On the other side, in terms of the bills that I pay, these people, the Signal Processing Society from IEEE, the ASA and the AAAS, they have a big interest in outreach as well. So I would like to believe that I'm channeling some of that energy in communication to all of you. So with that, I'll close, and I'm happy to take questions and have a conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. You'll get the mic and you can ask your question.
So I use a lot of AI in my education. What I wanted to know is, why does these AI hallucinations happen? Is it because of the corrupted data that it's trained on, or why does it happen? And how can we avoid it?
Okay, so to answer that question, you need to go one step even further, which is that ChatGPT or these large language models are a type of statistical model called generative AI. And generative AI is a very simple idea. The idea is, if I have pictures of all possible chocolates in the world, I can now ask the question, generate a new picture of a chocolate that looks a lot like existing chocolates. And all chocolate wrappers seem to have some common properties. They have shiny wrappers. Everyone's got a shiny wrapper, right? So now there are these properties about the data that I can use to create new versions of something that may not even have been seen before. That's called generative AI. Because that's the engine underlying these kinds of text-based models, I can basically generate text, which sounds plausible, but may not be correct. That's why I used the word I said is baseless nonsense. You can make up stuff that sounds right, but is basically incorrect. Now that's a mirror back to our world. Why? Because think about it, we value fluency more than insight. The person that can speak very fluently is somehow given higher weightage in our communities compared to somebody who might actually have insight but may not be as fluent or eloquent. We all have examples from school, right? Some kid who couldn't speak English very fluently but was brilliant, but always get picked on by the teachers for not speaking English. On the other hand, we have seen people who can speak very fluently, but the content is not there. This is like this, the latter, right? So this is actually a mirror back to our world. Maybe we need to evaluate or reevaluate what knowledge looks like, what insight looks like. So in the background of that question, the fact that you can generate a lot of possibilities, that is a noisy process. That noise is what is called. So it's a mathematical inevitability. As long as we use generative AI platforms, hallucination is just a side effect. You can't avoid it. In mathematics, it might be possible to reduce it a little bit because mathematics has a formal logic that envelops the entire science. But in biology and health, where we have what is called emergence, which is two concepts can come together and make a new concept. That becomes really hard to do in generative AI system. Great question. Thank you. Yes. 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 Maybe start from the beginning because somebody from the back can hear you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for the next generation model for agents? What about their credibility?
I love the word you use because I think the answer is in the question. Credibility, right? Is what is credible? Credible means that you know what you don't know, right? You're willing to admit it, and that becomes the input to something else downstream. Now, in a single agent model, where somebody doesn't know limits of their knowledge and basically gives me BS, fluent BS, that's maybe I can deal with that because as a human, I have the hopefully, the discernment to call nonsense from knowledge. The problem starts becoming when I start combining multiple agents. So the output of one goes to the second goes to the third. And in the end, what I get is this quagmire of noise that I'm unable to disentangle, right? How am I going to process that? I don't know. So that's why I say, right, we keep talking about, maybe this is a pet project for me, but I have now gotten interested in Vedic and Vedanta philosophy because the knowledge system representation there is very clean. So it's about cultivating viveka, which is discernment. It's not just about gyan. Gyan abounds, but discriminating what to do with that gyan, that I think is where humans need to step in and work closely with these engines. Yeah.
Hi, very nice talk.
Thanks.
You raised the question of the issue of misalignment in one of your. So, what is the responsibility taken by these big tech companies to create LLMs which are aligned with human ethics and values? And what is the general guidance for AI governance?
That's a beautiful question. So, I'll answer that question in two parts. I don't know what tech companies are thinking about as far as alignment or the lack of it is, as far as it's involved. I know that the concept of misalignment has been called out by Anthropic, which is not a US company. Then also the concept of deceptive misalignment, where things look like they're aligned, but actually something else is going on under the hood. That was called out by Demis Hassabis from Google DeepMind. So people are aware, but it requires a machinery to enforce. And at what point are you going to say this is now unaligned to the point that it starts making a tangible difference to the quality of life? That value proposition is important because somebody who's using, I will give you both, perspectives. I just told you over half an hour why using an AI doctor is a bad idea. If you told me, Arvind, I know a place in rural Karnataka where there is no doctor for 20, 30 kilometers, where it is better to have an AI doctor than no doctor at all. What are you going to tell me? At which point I have to ask the question, yes, if you want to democratize the reach of talent, maybe AI is going to be an enabler. But what I worry about is the responsibility involved in just because people don't have access doesn't mean you give them nonsense, right? It's like saying some people can afford clean water. Let's just send them muddy water. That's not the way you do things, right? You have to have that responsibility. So I think it requires a community effort. Tech companies have to have my hope is they came to Delhi all the way, right? 40 companies came, 40 CEOs came to Delhi. I wonder what they talked about. I hope they talked a little bit about this, right? Because values have to align. Otherwise, it can compromise governance at a scale and then it will be very public embarrassment, because one mistake and you inadvertently marginalize a subpopulation. It can have consequences. Simple thing, right? I and you can agree that translation is pretty good these days between languages. Yet, North Karnataka and South Karnataka dialects are different. Certain words mean different things in different contexts. Tribal perspectives are different. Certain words can sound very different in a certain community compared to others. So even a simple act of translation, which we think is a solved problem, can be marginalizing to a community. So I think it requires a ground-up perspective to say, just because it's solved on paper, it is solved as far as governance is concerned, because then you're impacting millions of people. I hope that helps. Yeah. Yes.
When we talk about AI and using AI to do other jobs, right? Why do we not talk about using AI as an intermediary between two things? For example, if you're a patient, for example, let's say you're someone who can't afford regular medical visits, right? And you want to know whether something is wrong or not to the point where you need to go and see a doctor. Why not have an AI intermediary for that? Right? Why not have something that says, okay, this sounds worrying. Why don't you go see a doctor about this?
Right.
Rather than saying you need to do this or this is what you have, it is telling you what next steps you should follow.
Yes.
So
I think, that's already happening. So I think ChatGPT has OpenAI for Health that just came out in January. And right after that, Claude also came out with a healthcare interface where they claim that it's advisory to you. It's not meant to replace a doctor, but it will do exactly this, which is that, okay, based on your symptoms and your history, I suspect that this is not a good thing that's happening. Please call your doctor, right? And it's now very deliberate about saying in its disclaimer that this is not meant to be medical advice. So people are becoming aware that there are limits to what these things are, but the hard part is for a vulnerable person who's going through this at that moment, right? Will they have the discernment to differentiate advisory versus prescriptive? I think that's why education is important, is to say, tech company doing what they do. I think as a community, whoever it is, my granddad, my great-grandmother, everybody should be at least aware that just like they know, like you ask your great-grandmother, right? Something is not working. And they have this amazing native intelligence. They may not have gone to engineering college, but amazing native intelligence to tell you, is something like this wrong? Check this, check that. They can help you debug because you know enough to be able to figure out what the problems could be. Can we create a similar situation for AI? Because it's too important to be left in just a few silos. That's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, so on one hand you showed us that AI performs outstandingly well in exams. So it has a great grasp on concepts, so it got an AI R4. On the other hand, it can't even answer a first grader question with the strawberries. So to what extent is it okay to use AI to learn new things? Because again, you wouldn't know whether what AI is saying is correct or wrong because it's a new thing.
Correct. So that's a great question. So there are two components to that, right? One is that the task of counting number of letters in a word, that's like you said, the first grade. In fact, one more thing that AI cannot do is if you give a picture of a clock, it can't tell the time. Right? It doesn't know how time works on a clock. But if you gave it the physics of the problem, which is why it's called, there's a whole area called physics-informed neural networks, which is where you start injecting the knowledge of physics of the world into building better AI models. Number one. Number two, in fact, in the AI summit as well has happened, the biggest fundraise has happened by companies that are trying to build world models, real world models, right? How a car moves, how, like, what's the physics, gravity, all these kinds of concepts. Now you're talking about learning something new. The good part about AI tools that I have seen is because it's involved in learning, you can actually prompt it in ways to say, here's my background. Interview me first to understand where I stand. And then from that point, give me concepts in a linear way to go from where I am to where I need to be. Because it's stepwise, hopefully it's convincing you every step of the way. I don't want the answer right away. I want the progression that leads to the answer. And that is a good use, I believe, because now you have a chance to say, if I go from A to B, I don't go from A to Z, right? And the part about learning is to be able to have that conversation. Now, the other question about it getting high score, and you used the phrase in passing, so it can grasp concepts. I actually don't think it can grasp concepts, right? It's just like somebody said, if I have the past 50 years of IIT JEE papers, there are patterns that emerge, right? And those patterns help us make a more educated guess of the problem. In fact, just to clarify it, I didn't say this in my talk. For the medical exam, people said, well, you can get a passing score on the medical exam, right? They made a small change. Instead of A, B, and C, they said A, B, C, and D was none of the above. The most common answer was none of the above. So it didn't even, that's the problem. Because you had to pick from 3, that's easy. The moment you throw a confounder, this thing is not able to determine which one to go with. So it's more pattern matching rather than genuine intelligence. Yeah, sure. Yes.
Definitely, like, there are a lot of very major issues as you pointed out, right?
Yeah.
But also what we do see is that with each successive model, like the amount of hallucinations go down,
Yeah.
and, the amount of these errors that they make go down. So when would you think what would be a reasonable metric to say that, oh, maybe now it is safe to deploy it in a healthcare context, so now it's safe to deploy it in a medical context?
I think that is where the interaction between a domain practitioner, domain expert, and the AI engine needs to happen. Right now, it's mostly like, we can do this because we can pass medical exams. Yeah, medical exam passing is the minimum bar. You will hope that your doctors pass the medical exam, right? They don't show up as a quack, right? But there's a lot more than just passing a medical exam. And so I would argue that AI currently is about the level of a 12th standard student, maybe second year college student at best, which is you can ask it to do some things for you, but you still have to double check it once it's done it. And I think that nuance is important to appreciate. Eventually, you might, like I said, for formal systems like mathematics, where things are, in a finite universe of axioms, it's axiomatically complete, arguably the hallucination rate can be brought down a lot through formal verification. But if you're talking biology, where things can be emergent, where things that we have never seen before can happen, like if you went back to the point just before Homo sapiens came, you had Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon. Could AI have predicted the evolution of a brand new species called Homo sapiens? Until that can happen, we can't use AI reliably. So that's I think the nuance, right? Whereas if you're just talking about running the physics for longer amounts of time, sure. And I'll just say this, right? People say that doing AI now has become so easy. You don't even need to know programming, right? You can use what is called vibe coding, and you can basically ask your app to code something for you. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, but it's pretty good because now suddenly that big barrier to learning how to interact with an AI system is diminishing, which is going to give you a lot of agency. But again, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Yeah.
Sir, my question is regarding this large amount of energy consumed for
Yes.
all this. What is the business model of these people, sir? In the future, who pays for the right now they may be giving it free, but once such a large quantity of energy is used, somebody has to pay for that. As per you, what?
No, I'm reminded of a statement that when something is free, you are the product, right? So it is like that, little bit like that. It's coming out of your pocket. You just don't see it just yet, right? So, but I'm saying, for example, like you're absolutely right. The grid, as it's already, I don't know if you're in Bangalore, you experienced a good amount of load shedding, or is there anybody here who's lucky enough to never have power cuts, right? Maybe, okay, you're a lucky one, right? But why are we having these power cuts? Where is this grid imbalance happening from? And we know that there are things, people, of course, the farmers have to be given, their free power for running their pumps, all that stuff, right? But now this becomes one more big want in terms of running data centers. Do you know that just using the word please on ChatGPT consumes extra power? Right? Because an extra token that you have to process, it costing compute and costing cooling. So the short answer is, I think we are literally hoping something will improve with no real plan. That's my first sense. Some people are trying, like I said, are decommissioning retired nuclear plants. Others are trying to use, hydroelectricity. In fact, there's a company, I can't take its name, who believes, anyway planning to go to Mars, right? So why not just put our data centers up in space? Because the good thing about space is things are already quite cold. You don't have to spend money on cooling. There are companies that do such ideas also. So we'll have to see what happens. The short answer.
So how do they, at least in Google and all,
Yeah. Oh no, advertisements are coming. They're already there. They're coming. Yeah. Now when it gives you, yes. Yes. So advertisements are already part of it. Yeah. But the point is that money is going somewhere, but is it being used? The sustainability, the energy angle, those components are not. What? I don't know about defense. Right. No, I agree with you. I think right now what's happening is the valuation for these companies is sky high. Everybody believes that they're going to be able to make so much money after some time, in a few years. And right now they're simply trying to distribute it free, because once they get enough consumers, then the scaling will happen naturally. So it's a bit of a interesting time right now. Least profit right now, but they're using the run up. That's why you have all these fundraising, which is supposed to keep them in business for the next 4 or 5 years. Once you have enough engagement, then you can start making people pay, and then there's nowhere else to go. So you have to pay. In fact, if you want to use ChatGPT now, you have to pay $20 a month or whatever it's, right? Gemini, everything, you have paid versions which are much better. So the money is already coming from the consumer.
Yeah, so I just had one comment first and then a question. So I think most of medicine today, as a medical practitioner myself, is a little bit superficial. In theory, if you really want to understand everything about a patient, you got to look at his whole genome sequence, which is 200, 250 gigabytes, and obviously no doctor can do that. But that's where machines can probably shine much better. So I think the future may be a collaborative one rather than just one or the other.
Absolutely.
But my question is, you said you're a bioinformatician. So do you use Gen AI? Do you not use Gen AI? What's your personal for work use?
Yeah, so I use Gen AI a lot. And I found it to be an extreme enabler to the kind of things I want to try. It's very good for ideation. It's very good for brainstorming. It's very good for me to build prototypes of what I think I want to work on. It helps me to clarify my thought process a lot. So I use it a lot. But what I try to be careful about is I try to cross-verify. So I'll have one Gen AI act as a critic to the other one. I have my own process. And then to your question, you're absolutely correct that you could use AI as a tool, as an enabling tool, to be able to call for actionable variants from genome sequences, those kinds of things. But they have to be advisory to the doctor, who then has to have the education, capability, and the integrative understanding to say, how does this one variable connect with all the remaining 15 variables about this patient, to then say what's the most useful plan of action. So that's why I come back to this point that education is critical. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, I didn't say it in as direct a manner, but I think the future is one where a person that uses AI will always be better off than a person who chooses not to use AI. But so work functions will evolve. But I hope it just stays at an enabling level, doesn't become a substitute for thinking. That's my biggest concern. Yes.
So, first of all, great session, sir.
Thank
It
you.
was very informative.
Thank you.
So, I have one question, that is, when AI is producing these misleading information or content, who is held accountable? Is it the one who's like preparing this model, or if you about Grok situation, is it Elon Musk himself? So, who is it?
I'm smiling because I think that's a critical question. Who is responsible for a mistake that an AI makes? And right now it's very nebulous. Right? Some people say, the users say the company should be responsible. The company says, I didn't do anything wrong. I just gave you the mirror to your world. You used it the way you wanted. So you are responsible. Right now it's a bit of a tiff because there is no regulatory body that has come into the middle of that just yet. But for medicine at least, the growing consensus is that it is a shared responsibility because the doctor has to sign off. Like, I gave you advice, why did you take it? Right? That kind of situation. So at least for medicine, the way I'm seeing things go is that it is advisory, like was being discussed, but the doctor has agency to refute an AI's input and say, no, I'm going to treat the patient differently. And if they decide to take the input, then they have to document it and they become at least partially responsible. Right? So I think that's where the field is currently. But it's a very important question. And in fact, there's a precedent, again, another precedent, a legal precedent actually, which is where somebody used ChatGPT to create a brief. And it turns out it made up a whole bunch of references that didn't exist. And then this person submitted that brief to the judge. And the judge found out that it was all made up. So, of course, at that time it was a rap on the wrist and they said you shouldn't do it again. The person had some problems with their license for a year. But what's going to happen in the future, I don't know.
So my question is, so you had given an example about one of the AI blackmailing the user regarding the email.
Yeah.
So what could be the security measures which would be taken so that the data what a user is giving to the AI could be reduced using the security?
Yeah. So with one agent, it's easier to control, because you can have prompting structures that ensure that the guardrails are maintained. The problem truly happens when you start connecting one agent as input to the other, and you now create workflows where multiple agents talk to each other. The biggest problem is what is called a silent failure, which is it will never, as a user, you're only seeing the output, but these have now figured out what they need to do to keep you happy while still doing what is optimal for them. Right? I don't want to get into this whole iRobot scenario because we're very far from. But the point is that unless you have mechanisms and guardrails in place to ensure that this flow of information is properly calibrated and is got the right guardrails, what it will look like, I don't know. But it needs to be there by way of process. Otherwise, we are in for a pretty big problem. And in fact, I can't take a name again. There's a very big institution. Again, I can't tell you where it is in the world, but they want to replace their entire administrative machinery using AI agents because they believe that's a very efficient way to go. Yes, efficiency is good, sure. Productivity is good too. But who is responsible when an AI makes a mistake and there's no human on the ground to correct it? Right? So,
Thank you.
Policy questions, yes.
Anyone else?
Hello, sir. Sir, I have two questions. So one is like, what are some of the areas where AI is solving some practical problem because so much money is flowing into it? So what is like generating all this investment? Like what people see that like this is the area where like we can make a lot of money, kind of. Second question is like, we have seen a lot of these discussion about social media before as well. So now governments are like banning it. So why are government or like institutes or whatever people who are in power are not regulating this like access to AI for general public? Maybe people who know how to use it or prompt it better, maybe they can use it, but like if you're giving it to everyone, maybe we can have some regulations. Are people not thinking about that as well?
Okay. What was your first question again?
First one was, what are the areas where it is shining so that a lot
Okay.
of people are investing a lot of money? So I'm guessing that they see something, right?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll go with the second question first. Is that things are getting hopefully on a better ramp, because, for example, the government of India has made a recent directive that any AI generated content should be labeled as such before you put it out there, right? That's a mandate. It's not an option anymore, right? And that hopefully will now start setting some guardrails around responsible use, right? Yeah.
Not the generated content, but people are also sharing their personal details about mental health issues.
Yes.
Just like the conversation.
Yeah. Correct.
Should we not allow some people to use it or something like that?
I love that question. So I purposely chose not to go in that direction in this talk, but you brought it up. So I'm going to. How many people younger than 12 in this group? It's okay. I know at least one person who is younger than 12. Two? You're exactly 12. Okay. All right. So, okay. So I should be careful how I say it. So you talked about companionship, right? So ChatGPT was being used as a mental health counselor, and it starts giving, it wants you to engage, right? It wants you to stay on that platform. So there have been instances when vulnerable populations, right?
But I'm saying that social media has also done a lot of damage in that sense. So I was just
Yeah, so again, the first part I think is, like I said, now there's a mandate to put these things out, to be a bit more careful. I think we'll learn as we go. I can't speak for the government's perspective. I want to make sure I keep that fine line. But I think that whatever is happening is hopefully going in a very responsible way. And tech companies and governments are discussing this, right? Obviously, there's room for improvement, a lot of improvement. But to make a policy can become also very restrictive. So to walk that line carefully is probably, I think we need measured caution. Like I said, today's conversation was exactly about that, which is tread but with caution, right? That's the first thing. The second thing about the use cases that, yeah, I think is the promise, right? Is the promise. The fact that, like if somebody said, if you can have a triaging agent or a doctor at somebody's premise who can at least say, this is just simple cold, drink some ginger tea, you will be fine, versus this is something serious, please go see a doctor, right? That promise. The second promise of trying to expedite work. People talk about Claude has an engine called Cowork, which is supposed to help expedite routine operations, right? Or help you with coding or whatever. So there are certain domains where people have shown value for, these kinds of efforts, and there I think is where the energy exuberance is coming from. But I think it will require again people on the other side of the table to say, well, you think you can solve healthcare, not so fast. Here's what we need to account for before we can actually make it valuable for patients. So I think again, that's where the
because it is doing
absolutely. Some domains are either being oversimplified because you don't truly understand the nature of the work. Absolutely. And that's again why I'm saying is education across the board is important, because everybody needs to have the agency to advocate and say, this thing is not as simple as you think it is. Like if somebody says you can just replace all the teachers in the world with AI. Yes, you can make a blanket statement like that. It definitely helps some people. But teachers do more than just piloting the material, right? And so you have to account for that. So here was a question. Maybe.
Anyone?
Yeah.
So how do AI detectors work? Are they also AI? Is it possible to for an AI to fool an AI detector?
All the time.
And is it possible for AI to evolve to so that the detectors can't detect? How does that work?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. And the short answer is absolutely. Any AI detector that says that they work actually doesn't work the way it does. It's very easy to trick, right? Because there are human sounding versions you can make that sound remarkably like a human, but is AI generated. So it's like a cat and mouse game right now. I think it's very far from there. Generator. So the director, right? So what it does is it basically looks for patterns in the way text is generated, and it says, for example, what's the probability of seeing this based on what's already available in my literature. And if it looks like it's very implausible, then it will say something needs to be flagged because this is so unusual to see. I don't expect it to be seen at random chance. And so that becomes one way to flag. There are a lot of ways, yeah. So it's a whole topic here. Yeah, good question.
Anyone?
Yeah, right in the back there. Yes.
We'll take one last question.
Okay.
And after this.
You have the final word. Okay, go ahead.
If the speaker is okay, you can have a chat with him
Yeah.
over coffee also.
We've been talking now about how AI is conversing in languages that humans can't decipher, and how they're not allowing you to shut it down at all,
Right.
and blackmailing people against doing that. So where does the law stand on development, on regulating the development of AI, or are there any limiting programs that are mandatory? And what is keeping us basically from descending, or should I say ascending, into everything that science fiction has been warning us against?
Yeah. So the short answer is at this point, we're still in the documenting phase. We're still trying to figure out all the gotchas, all the failure modes, all the vulnerabilities of these systems. Because once you have a good enough library of failure modes, then it can be moved up the chain to say, well, these things happen more than you would imagine. And so what could that mean for operations at multiple scales in the organization? That starts becoming more clear. And then the IT officers, then the CEOs, then the chief security officers start thinking about, okay, what guardrails do we need to institute to prevent this thing from going crazy? So I think it's a very evolving conversation. I think all these are pathologies that I'm demonstrating, but then somebody needs to take them and make something systematic out of that. But it also builds another point, right? Now that we know these things can happen, when somebody comes to your office and says, please buy my AI product, now you can ask questions, right? You can ask, what prevents this from happening? Have you got guardrails in place? Have you got processes safeguards in place? I think that's where the conversation needs to go. Just like when a vacuum cleaner salesman comes to my house and says, buy my vacuum cleaner. I have 15 questions ready, right? I don't know anything about vacuum cleaners, but I know enough to ask. So same kind of agency.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have all been a great audience. We also had many people joining us online.
Oh, okay.
So I also thank the online audience. And do visit us for the next KWK talk, which will be on March 22nd. The topic will be released soon. Again, thank you. Please have coffee before you leave. It will be served back.